Hello everyone! The other day over at Twitch, I was streaming World of Warcraft, and our conversation came onto the subject as to what I thought about the endings for the expansions, and how most of the time there's something to be said about the ending that Blizzard gives to an expansion. For example, there's this critique that I have for the Cataclysm ending, Wrath of the Lich King ending, and we kind of ended up on the subject as to, okay, why do some work? Why don't some not work? And I figured, why not sit down and make a video about this? Now, of course, do keep in mind, this is all opinion-based. This is all just my take on it. And if you have something else to say, by all means, let me know in the comments down below. So to start it off, there's of course Classic World of Warcraft, but as I recall, there's no major end cutscene for Classic World of Warcraft. This was of course the first iteration that they had, and it was basically bringing the Warcraft world to life, from RTS into MMORPG into this open world game, where we dealt with big bads, big threats. We had Multicore, Black Queen Lair, Naxxramas, Ankh-Kiraj, all the big things, but it was basically more like a not so much focused on the storyline. I would say that they really started to focus back in Wrath of the Lich King. But if we're talking about, Naxxramas, then we're looking at older trailers like this one, where we can't even see the pixels anymore. But we do recall, like, there's Kel'Thuzad walking in the snow.
But I was not alone. Not entirely. The voice, now my only companion.
So there's Kel'Thuzad walking in the snow, listening to the voice of the Lich King, and slowly but surely being lured to Northrend. And they actually added quite a cool story to this, how by the time that Kel'Thuzad reached the Frozen Throne, he was like, okay, I don't want to party with the Lich King and Ner'zhul. But by that time, it was already far too late, and he, even when dealing with a being like the Lich King, not even death was a certainty. But yeah, the ending of Classic... it's kind of off the grid, ain't it? It wasn't a massive ending for an overarching story. But who can't love World of Warcraft Classic? So yeah, while there was a story in World of Warcraft Classic, I'd say that the focus wasn't there primarily quite yet. We had these bad guys show up, we took care of them, different threats all over the place, and then Burning Crusade showed up, and the Burning Crusade falls in a similar line, in my opinion. We have these massive characters of Warcraft 3, a Lady Vush, a Kael'thas, an Illidan Stormrage. They're left behind on Outlands from the Warcraft 3 storyline. Here they are again, deal with the story. And while there was somewhat of a story, an overarching one with eventually Kil'jaeden and the Burn Legion getting in there, the primary focus of the story, the game itself focusing more on it, I would say that switch was made primarily with Wrath of the Lich King. But overarchingly in the Burning Crusade, difficult to say. Especially when you look at some of the retcons, like for example, Illidan's motivation or Kael'thas turn to the side of the Burn Legion. What Kil'jaeden wanted to do there, overthrow a Sargeras maybe, but not really. Again, a bit out there. So if we have to rank it, and I would say again, after Wrath of the Lich King, that's really where the ending started to flow. But if we had to rank it, definitely not my favorites out there. Alrighty, so here we are. Wrath of the Lich King. And to put it in perspective, at this point in time, I've been playing World of Warcraft since Classic, but Wrath of the Lich King was really the one where I started to pay attention to the story in-game. They played out the Wrathgate cutscene, the Wrathgate cinematic, and that really sparked my interest into the lore. And before I knew it, played through Warcraft 3, read up on the story, and here we are today. Now, the setup in Wrath of the Lich King was that throughout our journey, as we came to Northrend, Arthas the Lich King was pretty much taunting us. He was taunting us to meet him at the top of Icecrown, where he was going to show us, where he was going to get the greatest fighting force that Azeroth had ever seen. Right? And he was going to one-shot us, because who could stand up against the might of the Lich King, and then resurrect us into his army. That was his point. Unfortunately for Arthas the Lich King, we have Tirion Fordring, who makes one final bidding to the light and shatters Frostmourne and gives us the opportunity to strike back, to be resurrected, to, defeat Arthas the Lich King. But at the end of the day, the Lich King came closest to winning, as far as I know, in the storyline. Like, he was one of the few that actually fulfilled his plans and goals and was like, okay, I'm ready to go now. If it wasn't for Tirion, they would be in charge now. So that's the setup of the ending. And then this cutscene plays out.
Father, is it over?
At long last. No king rules forever, my son.
I see. Only darkness before me.
Up to this point, this is one of the greatest cinematics done so far, because we got to keep in mind that this is a continuation of the storyline for Warcraft 3. And often when people ask me, with the new story development, with the lore, like what's going on there, we often look back at how basically the well of storytelling done in Warcraft 3 has been expanded by now and for quite a few years. But the cool part about Wrath of the Lich King is that they didn't mess it up. Like in Classic and Burning Crusade, they put these characters forth that we knew from the RTS. But like I said, the story was not a major focus quite yet. Yes, there was story, but it was a little bit over the place. It wasn't until Wrath of the Lich King where really Arthur showed up from time to time, taunting us to meet him there. The music, the implications for the history, how long he must have been there, the overarching threats of the Scourge, and of course the Forsaken and the Horde and the Alliance and Bolvar and Sourfang, all the good stuff. They did fantastically at bringing that story over from the RTS into World of Warcraft. But here it comes.
Without its master's command, the restless Scourge will become an even greater threat to this world. Control must be maintained. There must always be a Lich King.
And that's where my criticism for the ending of Wrath of the Lich King comes in, because I don't think that line works. The whole reason, as far as I could tell, behind there must always be a Lich King, because the restless Scourge must be kept under control. Who is going to take up this great task? And in my opinion, the only reason why they added this was to keep a door open to a potential future Lich King storyline. The reason for that is, as I mentioned before, throughout the campaign in Wrath of the Lich King, throughout the storyline, Arthur taunted us, and he wanted the greatest fighting force to be there at the top of Icecrown. Therefore, we have fought at this point against pretty much the might that the Scourge had to offer. The greatest and most powerful beings there were in his army, we've defeated them. So who exactly amongst the Scourge is still going to hold up a candle? Who's going to stand up against us and actually be able to defeat us? Then there's the point of, okay, well, it's not so much about their power, but more that they could be an overwhelming force on an island in the middle of the water. To which I'm like, okay, fair enough. Maybe there are so many Scourge still left out there that there has to be something, you need to do something to clean it up. So why not just put on a helmet, and then you guide all the undead to a single pit, like the Pit of Sauron, and then you use the allegiance that we have with the dragons in order to just kill them all. And then the Scourge threat has been taken care of. That's why I'm like, this whole ending about there must always be a Lich King, it doesn't really flow well. And bringing in the Shadowlands, if we look at like, okay, what exactly did they do with this overarching storyline? Not a whole lot. I'm sure that it's not come as a surprise where the Shadowlands is going to rank for me. But if we consider like, okay, what did they use this whole Wrath of the Lich King, there must always be a Lich King arc for? There was a cool moment with the Legion legendaries. That was kind of cool. But then once Bolvar was defrosted and actually came into action, we flow into the Shadowlands storyline. We flow into, the jailer was always there, and we flow into his daughter complaining how he sacrificed himself to keep the Scourge in check, and just the whole big mess. So yeah, even the whole there must always be a Lich King, unfortunately didn't really play out. But at the end of the day, it is still Wrath of the Lich King. Fantastic storyline overall. Moving on to the next one. Okay, so in order to set this one up, we got to keep in mind that after Wrath of the Lich King, we had this massive Cataclysm, Deathwing breaking out, transforming the world, all the good stuff. And at the end of it all, we united with the Dragon Aspects, together with Thrall, who became Uber Shaman, and we were able to defeat Deathwing. And here we get our, and by extension also Nuzov, and here we get the end monologue, the end dialogue of Alexstrasza and the other Dragon Aspects.
I can feel the elements awakening, rejoicing. The Cataclysm is over.
The champions who fought at our side assured the survival of our world. But now, we must see it with mortal eyes. We dragon aspects have fulfilled our great purpose, and our ancient power is expended.
And then she goes on to hand over the keys to the kingdom to the mortals of this world. When I was having the discussion on Twitch, I was like, yeah, the Cataclysm ending was alright, but I forgot about this little conundrum. I forgot about this problem that they created. So, Alex Rosa says that they've expended their power and they fulfilled their grand purpose. Back when they were made aspects by the Titans, their purpose was to safeguard Azeroth, right? So they were each given their own domains, and, the greens for the Emerald Dream, blue for magic, red for life, bronze for time, and Deathwing, the aspect of Earth. That was their purpose, to safeguard Azeroth. But over time, one of their own was corrupted by the old gods and fell to the madness, and so they had to rise up and take care of him. Now, first of all, their great purpose was never to take care of Deathwing. That wasn't their great purpose. Their great purpose was to safeguard Azeroth. And even if Deathwing was their great purpose, that means that their purpose was created by their great purpose. What I mean by that is that Deathwing would not have been the threat as we saw him at the end of the Cataclysm, would not have been so strongly connected to Earth, would not have been everything that we saw play out if he wasn't empowered to become Deathwing to begin with. If their purpose was to take care of Deathwing, then in turn, the Titans, they created their purpose. You know what I mean? It's like a circle, it's a loop. So not only does it go against what we knew about before, not only does it go against what the aspects were supposed to do, it basically, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Which is like, oh yeah, I remember now by the ending of the Cataclysm was a little bit, And of course, then they move on into the dawn of the Age of Mortals is upon us, and we're going to hand over the keys to the mortals of Azeroth, which led to Garrosh Hellscream bombing Fedamore, and the mortals starting yet another war. As after the Cataclysm, we move on into Mist of Pandaria. Okay, so supposedly this one shows both sides. So, Mist of Pandaria is quite a departure of what normally World of Warcraft would promote themselves as I remember a lot of people that looked at the introduction as, oh, there are Pandaren, what a jokes expansion, yada yada yada. For me personally, I love Mist of Pandaria. It's one of my favorite expansions, and it's rather interesting to see where the story went. So we have the Age of Mortals upon us, and there's just a massive conflict happening between the Alliance and the Hordes. But at the same time, they also discover a brand new land, the land of Pandaria, hidden by the mists. And on Pandaria, there are these Pandaren. There's a rich, deep history, culture. There's the threat of the Shah, all that good stuff. They literally... They created something new, and they wove it into the established lore, and that was really cool to see. Up to the point where we got to the ending, where the Horde and Alliance united against the threat of Garrosh Hellscream. And I remember the road getting there was quite interesting. There's a certain robot cat quest line where I kind of lost it. There was the whole idea as to why is the Alliance helping out the Horde after being in conflict with each other, which wasn't really properly done. But all the same, they wanted the world to rise up against Garrosh Hellscream inside of Orgrimmar. And at the end of the day, we managed to take them out. But then the question became, okay, what are we going to do with the two factions? Like, what's going to happen there? And this is where we end it.
You disappoint me, Garrosh. You are not worthy of your father's legacy.
His punishment is not for you alone to decide.
I won't let you take him.
We have all suffered from his atrocities. My people, more than any other.
Which was rather interesting, considering that, Jaina Proudmoore was standing in the room, that the Alliance was standing in the room, the Horde was standing in the room. Like, our boy Taranzu and the Pandaren, they had to deal with Garrosh for like one expansion, whereas the rest of us known him for quite a while longer. But okay, fair enough, Taranzu. Your people, more than any other, have suffered under the hands of Garrosh. And I'm not denying that they suffered, right? Like, the damage done to Pandaria by Garrosh was quite extensive. But yeah, okay, we're gonna put him on trial. Which, by the way, also rose the question amongst the community. Like, okay, if we put Garrosh on trial, why didn't we put a Deathwing on trial or an Arthas on trial? But yeah, we had to get into the next expansion, I suppose.
Let him stand trial in Pandaria. There, we will mete out justice for all.
And here something interesting happens. The cutscene diverges into two different storylines and then comes back together again. So for both the Alliance and the Horde, that's why I also picked up this one. They both have a different moment right here.
The Horde needs its true war chief. Now, more than ever.
Yes. But it was you that held the Horde together during this madness. It was you that protected our honor. From this day forward, Vol'jin, if you lead, I will follow.
I am not worthy. But I will give my all for the Horde.
So a big feedback that's going to come to this is that in this moment, this ending wasn't bad, right? Like in this moment, appointing Vol'jin as war chief was really cool to see. It was like Thrall handing over the reins. Vol'jin did have his whole arc with the Darkspear Rebellion and even a book tied in. But a big complaint when it comes to the ending of Mr. Pandaria is the follow-up, is the continuation. I remember saying, even back then, I'll get back to it in just a moment. Let's see the happy ending that we have for the Alliance.
Look at them. Already they plot against us. Seize this moment, Varian. Dismantle the Horde.
Ooh, and that moment amongst the fanbase. Oh, how dare Jaina say dismantle the Horde? Does she not understand? Not all of the Horde bombed Fedamor. Not all of the Horde stole the Divine Bell. How dare she want to dismantle the Horde? Yeah, it's not like they would ever become a threat again, right?
Guardsmen!
Father, what are you doing?
What a king must do.
I forgot that that's what Anduin looked like. Can we just have just a real one small moment? Let's look at our boy Anduin.
Father.
Look at him. Oh, the quality of these cutscenes have gone up though. Whew.
What are you doing?
What a king must do.
I will speak to your war chief.
I speak for the Horde.
And this, in turn, was also a big character development for Varian. Like, once upon a time, Varian was very similar to Garrosh, but over time, he became more like a Thrall, right? He became more to the viewpoint of an Anduin, which was character growth, really cool to see. Jaina, in turn, became from the Peacekeeper to, well, you could just hear her talk about how we should dismantle the Hordes. And now we're talking with our boy Vol'jin, who has been appointed as war chief of the Horde instead of Thrall, who is basically... led them from Warcraft 3 into this very moment.
Very well. The Horde has committed heinous crimes, Vol'jin. But some among you fought against Garrosh's tyranny. For that, I am willing to end this bloodshed.
But know this.
But know this. If your Horde fails to uphold honor as Garrosh did, we will end you.
And this kind of flows back, like this flows back in a lot of things, but we were talking earlier about the storytelling done in RTS compared to something like World of Warcraft, right? in World of Warcraft, you have certain rules, certain boundaries that you could do with storytelling. And we already knew when all of this story was developing that they were not going to get rid of the Horde. They were not going to get rid of the Alliance. They were not going to get rid of factions amongst them, right? So what ending are you going to give to a faction war between the Alliance and the Horde that's culminating to this big epic moment? And ultimately, what they decided was, okay, you know, we're going to write it off as Garrosh did it. Not all of the Horde is going to pay for his crimes. And at the same time, there were plenty amongst the Horde that also rose up against Garrosh. Fair enough. But for the Alliance point of view, it was an interesting moment to be sure. Like, okay, we're going to turn away here. We're going to... An enemy that's been a threat to us, especially if you consider like the Night Elves with their forest, an enemy that we've been fighting... we're just going to turn away from this. Okay, fair enough. The ending of the Cataclysm is here. But the problem is, and I remember saying this back then as well, if you're going to do an ending like this, then you pretty much say farewell to the faction war, which they weren't going to do. Time was going to tell how this ending was going to hold up. And now we can look back and be like, oh, okay, so you wrote off all the crimes that Garrosh did. Okay, fair enough. It wasn't all the Horde. It was just Garrosh and the War Chief, and they followed with it. But look at what happened when Sylvanas became War Chief, right? And how, again, a faction war was started. And again, we had to rise up and take care of a War Chief. Up to the point where we rode up to the gates of Orgrimmar, and okay, fair enough, we didn't do the Siege of Orgrimmar 2.0, but Saurfang had to sacrifice himself. The similarities are eerie in that regard, right? And like I said, the Vol'jin has been done very poorly because of what happens after this. So for the ending of the Cataclysm, for the ending of Mr. Pandaria, I would say that's a pretty solid ending for the ending of Mr. Pandaria. It's just a shame that it doesn't hold up in regards to the overarching storytelling, and even back then we could foresee that was going to happen. As well as, this is something rather interesting. Like I spoke about how they put Garrosh on trial compared to other bad guys that weren't put on trial. But Garrosh was going to be our gateway into the next expansion, Warlords of Draenor. But they kind of forgot to explain that in-game. So, sorry, I'm laughing. For those who just purely stuck to learning the story from in-game, you would go from this moment on that Garrosh put on trial. The trial is not shown in-game. And then all of a sudden the Dark Portal turned red. And you were kind of having to figure out, like, okay, what happened? And what happened was kind of complicated. Garrosh, he went back 35 years in the past. He connected the Dark Portal to our time period. He brought back a new horde. But regardless, that's the start of an expansion, not the ending. I just still find it funny that it wasn't until max level in Warlords of Draenor that they started to explain, like, this is actually how the expansion started. It was a good time for lore channels, though, I can tell you that much. Right, moving on. Speaking of Warlords... Okay, so to set this up, Warlords of Draenor ending. As I mentioned, our Garrosh was, with the aid of Kairos Dormu and Rephion, went back in time, 35 years, up to the point of the formation of the Horde. But instead of the Horde drinking the blood of Manoroth, our Garrosh was there warning his father Gromash, not really his father, but his father Gromash, and they would make the Iron Horde. We would never be slaves, but we will be conquerors. So, Gromash and Garrosh started this whole expansion. Throughout the expansion, the story develops, we make allies, we take care of our enemies, and eventually, due to our actions, Gul'dan manages to still claim the Horde as his own. He has Kilrog drink of the demon blood, and basically still make his Horde. And he summons Archimonde into the world. Our Gromash is overthrown as war chief by Gul'dan, is imprisoned. But for our point of view, he was never turned into an ally or a good guy. We see him in the hands of Gul'dan, and then we see him in the final raid where we liberate him, and then he stands with us during the final fight. But keep in mind, this is the man who started the expansion. Just FYI, this is the man who, together with Garrosh, did all the things, and I always felt like there was a fair bit of storytelling missing to go from Gromash Hellscream as we saw him, this big bad, this big enemy that we had to take care of, to, well, this ending. And this is also where they picked up the trend of connecting the expansions, right? Not so much in a massive overarching story, but more so that there's a catalyst in the previous expansion which kicks off the next one. So we had Garrosh at the end of Mr. Pandaria kicking off Warlords of Draenor, and here we have alternate Gul'dan being sent over into our reality to kick off the expansion Legion. And while there was a little bit of confusion, I will say they did a fantastic job establishing alternate Gul'dan as his own entity compared to our Gul'dan. If you haven't heard it yet, they have, they have plenty of episodes on the World of Warcraft channel. They've got like the Burns of Shao, or they got, legacy episodes, right? But they also did audiobooks in combination with that. And one of them is about Gul'dan and the Tomb of Sargeras. A must listen, in my opinion. You must check those out. Okay, so Archimond, which is supposedly our Archimond, but let's not dive into twisting Nether transcends realities. Archimond is defeated. Grommash, literally just been liberated from the raid, has murdered so many Draenei, has caused so many problems on alternate Draenor. What happens?
It's done. Gul'dan failed. Draenor is free!
No. No. You don't get to join the cheer parade, Grommash. I don't know who decided that you were going to be the face of, oh yeah, we've done it, we've won the expansion. But you're still the bad guy, Grommash. You've done nothing to be part of our team. What should happen is Yirl right now turning around and be like, okay, Grommash, so about all those crimes you committed, do you want to surrender, or are we going to do this the hard way? But no, he gets to be part of the celebration right now.
You don't think it's over?
Gul'dan and the devils that command him are not so easily banished. I fear this is only beginning.
If you ever need us, we will be here.
Until we meet again.
Which turned out to be a filthy lie, Yirl. Where were you when we needed you, huh? Where were you in the Legion expansion? Not with us. Yeah, we could have used you. Instead, they will put Yirl on this whole Holy Light Crusade, which I still feel like deserves so much more explanation than they gave it in the Magar recruitment scenario. Because apparently there was a alternate Garrosh born that joined the Light Army led by Yirl, and Yirl joined the Naru on their Holy Crusade, but there was also conflict between the Orcs and the Draenei as to who was draining their planet, and the Botanica, and all that good stuff. I just feel like that storyline deserves so much more than the hints that we've been given.
A great man once told me, in the light, we are one. The future is ours. And we will see Draenor rebuilt. Together.
Yeah, again, like, I don't get why Grommash gets to be part of the celebration here. It makes very little sense. And I feel like that has to do with, I don't know, cut content or a story that doesn't get the development that needed. But yeah, that's why, like, having Grommash there celebrates, it just made a lot of questions. It rose a lot of questions, yes. Dutch boy in the house. But like I said, alternate Gul'dan sent over to our reality, kicks off the expansion by opening up this massive gateway at the Tomb of Sargeras. And the world unites to take care of this threat. Massive losses on both sides. War Chief Vol'jin, after playing a very small part in Draenor, where he congratulated us on a garrison, is taken care of on the Broken Shore. Varian Wrynn dies, passes on the title of leadership to Anduin Wrynn. In exchange, we would see Sylvanas Windrunner take over leadership on the Horde side, and we would see Anduin Wrynn take over leadership on the Alliance side. The faction conflict was hinted at in Stormheim, but not really pursued. Instead, our full focus was on taking care of the Burning Legion, kill Jaden, and then go to the home planet of the Burning Legion on Antorus. Let's roll up the ending. As a precursor, I think I should say, this is something that came forward during our discussion on the stream as well. When it comes to the endings for the expansions, I think my favorite, pretty sure my favorite, is the one for Legion. Start to finish, I think Legion has done a fantastic job at telling the storyline. And the ending, although, again, the sword didn't really go very far, which might still play a part. What sword? Haha, memes. Overall, I think Legion just wraps it up so nicely.
You have done well, mortals.
It is time.
We must gather our strength. Return home, children of Azeroth.
Illidan, we've done all we can.
Every choice, every sacrifice has led me to this moment. To face him once again.
You are not coming with us.
The hunter is nothing without the hunt. Did you not see this fate, prophet?
Fate. Our survival was never in fate's hands.
This part right here, I personally think is a little bit underrated. So even to this day, people ask me, what about the prophecy as foretold in Valen's short story? What about the prophecy with Old Anduin as foretold in the comics? And while there's always the idea of this is something they could use in the future, and there's always the idea of over time, different teams, different people will have different visions when it comes to the storyline for Warcraft, right? I think right here, we also have an in-game lore explanation as to why those visions most likely will not become a reality, or at least why I think that. Because here we learn the lesson that visions and fate and the destiny shown by the path of light, in this case, is not 100% true. And destiny was in our own hands. That's the whole part about Illidan rejecting the gift of Zeta. That's the whole part about Velen having to look at his whole life with running away with the Draenei and be like, okay, maybe we can make a stand. Maybe we can take action. Maybe it is time to change our fate ourselves. I think that they've actually quite nicely done that prophecies in that regard are to be, taken with a grain of salt. Whereas the light sees one single path, the void sees 1,000, and somewhere in the middle there might be truth, there might be prophecy, but at the same time, there also won't be. Oh, and of course, our boy Illidan, who, after the Burning Crusade, where he basically just showed up and he was like, I'm a bad guy now, after the Burning Crusade got a redemption story. And this was something asked to Metzen during BlizzCon, and Chris Metzen said, I would love to do a redemption story. And this is basically where Illidan got his storyline. And I kind of really love what they done with him. I love the interaction with Maiev. I love how he rejected the gift of Zeta, even though the Illidan novel had this whole prophecy foretold, another prophecy that didn't come true. It's a bit of a shame how Malfurion and Tyrande arc played out. It's let's not get in there. But overall, the Illidan story, yeah, really cool. And I'm curious if they're ever going to bring him back in the future.
Light be with you, Illidan Stormrage.
Brother, your crusade is over!
And of course, a massive storyline with Sargeras and the Burning Legion. Now, nothing is without criticism, and one of the major things that for me that stood out during the Legion storyline is, at some point, Okay, I should go back. In the Illidan novel, they conjure up the storyline in which Illidan makes like an anchor between Argus and the Black Temple. And I think that was the original plan. But over time, they changed course and they made it so that there was this Sargerite keystone, a mission that Illidan sent his demon hunters out for. And they got the Sargerite keystone. And this keystone was like a gateway to every single world. And Sargeras kept it on the prison world of Mardum. Okay, cool story. We got ourselves a gateway, and we can visit like worlds or whatnot. But then Illidan uses it to make a gateway between Argus and Azeroth, like a massive sky thing opens up, which in turn gives Sargeras the opportunity to visit Azeroth. What happens during the Antaurus raid is if you look up in the skybox, you can see that the cloud that is Sargeras gets closer and closer to Azeroth as you go through the raid. And I believe there's like data mined voice files where Magni Bronzebeard actually acknowledges this, and he's like, "Oh, the Fredo Sargeras champion!" But in game, that never really played out. I don't know why they didn't make it in game. But if you pay attention to the skybox, you can see that Sargeras is getting closer. However, more to the point, the criticism is that if Sargeras had himself a Sargerite keystone, and why didn't he just make a gateway between Azeroth and Argus? Like, why in all those millennia as it had been floating around, why didn't he do it? But, you know, details. How iconic that shot has become, hasn't it? With Sargeras stabbing Azeroth. I think they even used it for like... they did like a Bob Ross parody for Hearthstone with Sargeras as well. And I'm pretty sure this is the first time that we see him in-game. Yeah, looks very cool. And then, of course, the question, like, okay, what are Illidan and Sargeras going to do now? Is Illidan just going to hurt him all the time? Are they going to try to cleanse Sargeras? Is he going to become part of the Pantheon again? Open-ended. Like, they can go any direction. Similar to, like, there must always be a Lich King. They kept it open. But oh no, there's a sword in Silithus! Oh no! So there you have, once again, the hook into the next expansion, right? Because the sword inside of Silithus would, like, unearth Azerite, kick off another war between the Alliance and the Horde, would change the face of warfare on Azeroth. But for the ending of Legion, like I said, it's my favorite one out of all of them that they've done. And considering how much I keep my mouth shut, how little criticism I have of the ending, it should speak for itself how well they've done. To be honest, Legion, to this day, is still my favorite expansion. Just for the sheer amount of content that they added to the game. It wasn't perfect, don't get me wrong, like the legendary system and whatnot. But for me, one of the best times that I had in World of Warcraft, and they should be really proud of what they put down back then. So yeah, the ending. A sword stuck in Silithus. Haha, what sword? So this sword kicked off Battle for Azeroth. And I kid you not, when we had this conversation on stream, I did it from the top of my head, and we got to the point of, okay, what about the ending for Battle for Azeroth? And I had to rack my brain as to what the ending for Battle for Azeroth was. And there's a reason for that. We'll get to that in just a second. Okie dokie, so I got myself a drink, went to the toilet real quick. So, when we're talking about the ending for Battle for Azeroth, we also need to talk about the beginning, as to explain, why I kind of forgot what Battle for Azeroth ended with. Because the beginning was very much faction war. Similar to how Mr. Pandaria, they have like this intro cutscene about the ships blowing each other up, and we eventually end up on Mr. Pandaria. And then, you know, we deal with the Shah, the Pandaria, all that good stuff, but it still ends with the faction war as well, right? Here we have a cutscene in which we have Sylvanas Windrunner, Warchief of the Horde, spewing things like...
What makes us we have paid the price for sharing this world. And we have forgotten what makes us strong.
What? Okay, shall we do that from the beginning? Okay, let's be fair. Let's play the entire thing from the beginning, yeah? Let's hear what the Dark Ranger has to talk about.
Ours is a cycle of hatred. Alliances forged and broken. We have paid the price for sharing this world. And we have forgotten what makes us strong.
Okay, so how does that relate to the ending that we got? And for those who are like, I don't remember the ending either, it was blowing up N'Zoth. How did we go from this to, oh yeah, by the way, there's also N'Zoth out of his prison? So here we got this really, really cool cutscene, right? Like really beautifully rendered. And it kind of makes me wonder, now that we're looking back at it, I kind of wonder if the battle at Siege of Orgrimmar, if that was the original ending that was supposed to happen. And Sylvanas blasting off, and that's just where Battle for Azeroth was supposed to end. But okay, let's roll back a little bit, put it into context. At the end of Legion, Sargeras stabs Silithus. Silithus, Azerite comes forward. Azerite is in the hands of Sylvanas Windrunner. And now we know that the jailer prophesied to her that that moment was going to happen, which would then lead to her being an ally to the jailer. But I still have my doubts that the jailer was even a thing back then. Whatever. We have this war between the Alliance and the Horde. This happens after the burning of Teldrassil. So the opening cinematic is not really the opening moment of the story. The opening moment was actually the Horde invading Darkshore, burning down Teldrassil, that whole cutscene. That was basic the War of Thorns, which they added to the Collector's Edition, which also relates to what she says in this cutscene. She mentions about that we've forgotten what makes us strong, that allegiances are not really forged. They also had this moment. Which, looking back at it, is kind of funny, but not really. So, yeah, okay, she was talking about how allegiances are formed and how they don't last. So in the Collector's Edition, she actually makes a rather interesting case to Saurfang as to why they should once again go to war with the Alliance. That the Boy King can't keep them under control, that they might broker a peace for like 50 years or maybe 100 years, but at some point, they're going to fight again. Basically, the motivation that Jaina could have also used in order to dismantle the Horde back at the ending of Mr. Pandaria. But, you know, here we are again, faction war in full front. And I want to bring up the ending that I think this expansion should have had. The ending that I would see fit for Battle for Azeroth is this one right here, where Saurfang calls for Mak'gora and exposes the darkness of the Warchief to all of the Horde to see. By exposing the darkness, Sylvanas blasts off and goes do her Bolvar thing and kicks off the next expansion. The more that I talk about it, the more I genuinely start to believe that this is where they wanted to end the expansion. Because let's not forget that every single... they got like this whole trend going of the previous expansion kicks off the next one. I don't know. But anyways, like this cutscene looks way better. Way more impactful, way cooler. Saurfang laying down his life for the fate of the Horde and, you know, the fate of the world. Exposes Sylvanas, plays into her emotions, and she's like, "You are all nothing!" That's right, I said it.
You are all nothing!
Ha, I got you. You've been exposed. And, you know, from here on out, Sylvanas would yoink out a ukulele and start making an apology video for the rest of the Horde, but nobody would really listen. So here she's like, tin soldiers, there's more at hand, I'm gonna blast off to the jailer now, and Saurfang is dead. But that's not where it ended. That is not where this expansion ended. Because we have an old god on the loose. Alright, so the real ending for the expansion happens right here. as a B storyline, basically, as a side thing, throughout Battle for Azeroth, we had Queen Azora, who worked on betraying N'Zoth, but also releasing N'Zoth, whatever. And for the first time, since the days that the Titans walked, well, not really walked Azeroth, but the Titans brought order to the planet, there's an old god on the loose, an old god broken out of their prison. And whereas we saw in the past, a Deathwing working for N'Zoth was able to cause the Cataclysm, imagine the death and devastation that something like N'Zoth would happen. He corrupted not one, but 2 zones, and then was taken care of by us. So, yeah, this is the ending of Battle for Azeroth.
Warning, corruption levels approaching 100%.
No! You got to keep fighting, champion!
Through your flesh, my Black Empire is reborn.
Don't listen to his lies! You don't belong to him!
Heal the wounds, champion!
Azeroth! Her strength is your strength!
Attention, new anchor point acquired.
Well then, what are you waiting for?
Acknowledged. Firing sequence initiated.
Hold on, champion!
So, yeah, I just had to like double, triple Google if this was the actual ending for Battle for Azeroth, but it was. This is how it ended, which, considering how the expansion started, is just very weird. I think it speaks volumes that the ending, if your ending is so hardly speculated by the player base of this is just not real, the speculation of N'Zoth put himself in the sword on purpose is purely there because people refuse to believe that this poor ending is the actual thing. Yeah, it's like this is how you folded the expansion, which like if you read the comments, there's like plenty of people that are like, I hope there's more to this. This can't be the end, yada yada yada. But this was the ending for Battle for Azeroth. But it was only a taste. It was only a taste of things to come, as, of course, Battle for Azeroth would lead into the expansion Shadowlands. And already a spoiler, heads up, the Shadowlands ending is the worst one in my opinion. Shadowlands in general is the worst one in my opinion. When we're talking about the story of Warcraft, people are asking like, what's the quality? Is it enjoyable? Yada, yada, yada. Often Shadowlands is brought up, but I think that Shadowlands is so poor in quality compared to the other ones, is that it's just really hard to explain like, oh yeah, this is Warcraft. Oh, by the way, here's the Shadowlands. To set it up, let me first pull up the cutscene. To set this up, we have a Sylvanas Windrunner in league with the Jailer. Why? Not fully explained until the Sylvanas novel, which came out near the end. Sylvanas opens up the rift between Azeroth and the Shadowlands, this cosmic force that a lot of people know about. And then throughout the expansion, there's a very vague explanation as to who this Jailer is. Sylvanas opens up the way into the afterlife. We party there. We meet everybody until the final confrontation with the Jailer. Even though the Jailer could have taken care of us a million different times before, he never did. He anticipated that he was going to win. And you could make the comparison to the Lich King back in Wrath of the Lich King, where Arthas showed up and taunted us and let us live because he could have one-shotted us, which is fair enough. But Arthas did it for the purpose. Arthas did it because he wanted the greatest fighting force to end up at the top of Icecrown. The Jailer did it because of arrogance, I suppose, because he could not imagine that he was going to lose. And to be fair, our boy, our Jailer, has been said to have been able to play this game, play this storyline since the beginning into his favor. He's been able to predict certain moments, like prime example, Silphus being stabbed by Sargeras and therefore Azeroth popping out. The jailer predicted this to a detail. So he's been able to potentially predict the future and potentially predict the storyline of Warcraft to work in his favor, to escape the Maw and get the Zera of Mortis, all that good stuff. But, of course, they couldn't just leave it there. They couldn't just leave it with, oh yeah, the jailer did it, which is, oh, if they ever make any retcons, I hope. That's the funny thing as well. Like, we've had a time skip. We've had about 5 years between Shadowlands and Dragonflight where there's like peace and nothing really happened on Azeroth. It gives a chance to mature some of the characters. It gives a chance to Azeroth to breathe. And in all that time, nobody really cares about what happened in the Shadowlands. Nobody really cares about, well, this. Let's play.
Must not be.
You have betrayed your duty as Arbiter, and shall be bound forevermore. Your madness has threatened the cycle of life and death entire.
You could have sought another way, brother. Imagine what we could have accomplished together.
Why, Zovar? What drove you to this end? You preserve that which is doomed. A cosmos divided will not survive. What is to come?
And that's how sad Pinocchio gave us a warning that nobody's really done anything with. Like, nobody really cares about what the jailer tried us to warn about. Something is to come. Nobody really cares. And honestly, I think that's the best way of dealing with this. I think the whole idea of the jailer is behind the story of Warcraft and the events of the Shadowlands. Yeah, it's difficult for characters like Anduin and Sylvanas to pursue their upcoming storylines. But I honestly would say that nothing really of value is lost if you just disregard the Shadowlands. But yeah, what the heck do I know? So, to keep it back on focus, to keep back on point, the ending of the Shadowlands is definitely my worst, but not so much even because of the ending itself. Like, it's more the whole overarching thing. It's more like, okay, now you explain the jailer's motivations at the end, once they're defeated. Is that really the good moment to do it? And I heard speculation from people saying like they had originally planned to do this at the beginning and then revealed the Primus as the bad guy, and somewhere along the line they changed it. But to that I would say there's a similar speculation as to N'Zoth is actually in the weapon. Can they? Yeah, sure enough. But is that the story told so far? No, not really. This is just a way for us to try and make something out of these moments, right? But like I said, when it comes to Dragonflight, I've personally been really enjoying the storytelling. A lot of people have been asking me like, how has Dragonflight been so far? On surface level, I really enjoy it. I do wish there was a little bit more depth here and there, especially when it comes to, for example, the Primalists or the Sundered Flame. I would like to know more about their side of things before taking care of them. I think there's a lot more to be said about their storyline and their motivation than what's been given so far. But at the same time, I am having way more fun than I had in the Shadowlands. And some parts of Dragonflight, for example, the story of the Blue Dragonflight or the Orc Heritage Armor questline, in my opinion, is some of the best storytelling that they've done in Warcraft, period. So, yeah, there's definitely stuff to be said there for Dragonflight. So I'm hoping, I'm curious where Dragonflight's going to go, and I'm curious where the storyline's going to go. But for now, I think we've been jamming on for long enough. This is my take on the expansion endings. Most curiously, people were in the chat about the ending for Wrath of the Lich King. Like, what did I mean with there must always be a Lich King thing? But yeah, you're now up to speed. By all means, everybody, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Subscribe if you like my videos. And until next time, see ya!